Don't touch that coat. Emily Carter froze with one hand suspended inches above the black ceremonial jacket hanging inside the Alpha King's private wardrobe. The voice behind her was quiet, almost controlled, which somehow frightened her more than a shout ever could. She turned slowly. King Alexander Blackwood stood in the doorway, 6 feet 3 inches of stillness framed by the pale afternoon light of the royal chamber beyond. He was not supposed to be here. The council session was scheduled to last another 2 hours. Every servant in Blackridge Palace knew it because Vanessa Hale had repeated the schedule twice that morning. Yet Alexander was here, his dark hair slightly disordered from the wind, his silver-gray eyes fixed first on Emily, then on the jacket beside her. Emily's heartbeat stumbled. She was an Omega Maid standing alone in the one room she had been warned never to enter without supervision. Worse, she was standing beside the king's ceremonial clothes with something she could not explain shining faintly along the collar. "Your Majesty." Her voice barely carried. She lowered her hand immediately. "I can explain." Alexander stepped inside. Emily instinctively moved backward until the polished cedar cabinet pressed against her shoulders. The wardrobe suddenly felt much smaller than it had 30 seconds ago. 12 feet across, perhaps 15 from the door to the far wall. Yet with the Alpha King occupying its center, there seemed to be nowhere left for her to stand. His gaze moved over the room with unsettling precision. The folded shirts, the polished boots, the open wardrobe, the black jacket. Her. Emily forced herself not to look away. She had spent years learning how to become invisible around powerful wolves. Keep her eyes lowered. Finish the work. Leave before anyone remembered the Omega Maid had been there at all. None of those rules could help her now. Alexander took another step. The faint scent of cedar and cold mountain air reached her, but beneath it was something sharper, something metallic. Emily glanced toward the jacket again. There, along the inside edge of its collar, almost invisible against the dark fabric, rested a single silver-colored drop. Her wolf had recoiled the instant Emily noticed it. Not fear exactly. "Warning. I was told to bring the jacket here," she said. Alexander's expression did not change. "By whom?" Emily swallowed. Before she could answer, footsteps sounded in the hallway outside. More than one person. Approaching quickly. Alexander heard them too. His eyes shifted toward the open doorway. For one strange second, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then he looked back at Emily, and something colder than anger entered his face. Understanding. Not of her. Of something else. Something she could not yet see. He crossed the remaining distance to the doorway. Emily's fingers tightened around the edge of her plain gray apron. She expected him to call for the guards. Expected her name to be spoken loudly enough for every servant in the royal wing to hear. Instead, Alexander reached for the brass handle. The footsteps drew closer. He closed the door. The latch clicked softly into place. Emily stared at him. "Your Majesty?" Alexander remained facing the door for a moment, listening. Then he turned the lock. The tiny sound seemed impossibly loud. Emily's breath caught. He finally faced her again, but there was no fury in his eyes now. Only calculation. His gaze returned to the black ceremonial jacket. "Step away from it," he said. Emily obeyed immediately. Alexander did not move toward her. He moved toward the coat, stopping several feet away as though even touching it might be a mistake. Then voices murmured beyond the door. Emily recognized one of them. Vanessa. Her stomach dropped. Alexander's eyes narrowed. "Now," he said quietly, "tell me exactly who ordered you into my wardrobe." Emily opened her mouth, but Vanessa's muffled voice beyond the door stole the answer from her. "Your Majesty?" The words were sweet with practiced concern. "We were told you returned early. Is everything all right?" Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Alexander raised one finger, not threatening, simply asking for silence. She nodded. Only 3 hours earlier, silence had been the safest thing Emily Carter owned. Morning had arrived over Blackridge Palace beneath a thin gray sky, turning the tall windows of the servants' wing into sheets of dull silver. Emily had been awake before sunrise, carrying fresh linens through corridors still smelling of beeswax, cedar, and yesterday's fireplace smoke. At 22, she had already learned that palace work rewarded 2 kinds of people, those important enough to be noticed and those useful enough to disappear. Emily belonged firmly to the second group. She was an Omega, and in Blackridge, Rank followed a person almost as closely as a shadow. Nobody needed to announce where she stood. The assignments did it for them. Noble attendants prepared royal chambers. Senior servants managed formal dinners. Beta staff carried messages between council rooms. Emily scrubbed wash basins, folded towels, polished silver, and carried water up narrow service stairs until her arms ached. She did not resent the work. Work was honest. People were harder. Move, Carter. A senior maid had brushed past her that morning without waiting for Emily to step aside. Emily had caught the stack of folded sheets against her chest before they slipped. Sorry, she had murmured automatically. The other maid had already forgotten her. That was normal. Emily preferred normal. Being overlooked meant fewer questions about why her wolf was so quiet, why she had arrived at Blackridge with one worn suitcase and no family willing to speak for her, or why an Omega with careful hands and a sharp memory had never advanced beyond the lowest household duties. She kept those answers folded away like old letters. By 8 o'clock, she was in the laundry room sorting royal linens when two younger servants began whispering about King Alexander. He had entered the council chamber before breakfast, they said, and would remain there until late afternoon. One girl claimed he had dismissed 3 advisors the previous week with nothing more than a look. Another insisted he could recognize a lie by scent alone. Emily concentrated on folding a white towel into exact thirds. She had seen Alexander only from a distance. Once on the palace steps beneath falling snow, surrounded by guards and visiting alphas. Once in the Great Hall, where hundreds of voices had gone quiet when he entered. He carried authority without needing to display it, and that made him more intimidating, not less. Emily had no desire to become part of any story involving him. Her plan for the day had been wonderfully small. Finish the linens, help in the West Wing, eat supper, return to her narrow room, and read until sleep came. Then Vanessa Hale appeared in the laundry doorway. Conversation stopped immediately. Vanessa supervised the royal household with the precision of a clock and the warmth of winter glass. Her dark blue uniform was immaculate, every brass button catching the light. Emily Carter. Emily straightened. Vanessa almost never used her first name. Yes, ma'am. Vanessa held a garment bag across one arm. There has been a change in assignments. Something in her tone made Emily's wolf stir uneasily. Vanessa extended the bag. The king's ceremonial jacket was delivered to the wrong room. You will return it to his private wardrobe. Emily did not take it. Not immediately. Everyone knew the rule about the royal rooms. Her hesitation lasted barely a second, but Vanessa noticed. Is there a problem? Emily looked at the garment bag, then at Vanessa's perfectly calm face. I thought only senior attendants were permitted inside His Majesty's wardrobe. Vanessa smiled without kindness. Are you refusing a direct order? The laundry room became painfully quiet. Emily could feel every servant pretending not to listen. She reached for the bag. No, ma'am. Vanessa released it into her hands. Good. As Emily turned toward the door, Vanessa added one final instruction. And Carter. Emily looked back. Make certain no one sees you lingering. Emily carried the garment bag through the servants' corridor with both hands, careful not to let the black fabric brush the stone wall. Vanessa's final words followed her all the way upstairs. Make certain no one sees you lingering. It sounded ordinary enough, yet something about it refused to settle. Emily knew Blackridge Palace too well to ignore a feeling like that. The building had rules within rules, boundaries that were rarely written because everyone understood the cost of crossing them. The first floor belonged mostly to public business, with reception halls, offices, and rooms where visiting pack leaders waited beneath portraits of former kings. The second floor held council chambers and formal dining rooms. The third was different. The royal wing began there, beyond a wide staircase guarded by 2 stone wolves and a pair of uniformed sentries. Emily had worked at Blackridge for almost 3 years, and she could count on one hand the number of times she had been permitted past those guards. She presented the household assignment card Vanessa had given her. One guard studied it longer than Emily expected. Royal wardrobe? He asked. Yes, sir. He glanced toward his partner before returning the card. King Blackwood is in council. I was told he would be there until late afternoon. The guard stepped aside. Do what you were assigned and come straight back. Emily nodded and continued. The atmosphere changed almost immediately. Downstairs, the palace was never truly quiet. Doors opened, carts rolled, Telephones rang in administrative offices, and servants crossed hallways carrying trays or documents. Here, the carpet swallowed her footsteps. Tall windows overlooked miles of pine forest descending toward the valley, and the scent of cedar drifted from polished wooden panels. Emily passed only one attendant, who barely acknowledged her. She tightened her grip on the garment bag. King Alexander's private suite occupied the eastern end of the corridor. Two large doors marked the entrance, but the assignment card directed household staff through a smaller service door around the corner. Emily unlocked it and entered a preparation room lined with cabinets. Beyond it stood another door. She stopped. A small brass plaque carried 3 words, "Private Royal Wardrobe." Emily stared at them. Senior attendants normally handled everything beyond that threshold. Even cleaning was performed under supervision. The rules surrounding Alexander's private rooms were not merely about rank. Years earlier, before Emily arrived, a servant had supposedly entered without authorization while the king was away. Nobody agreed on exactly what happened afterward. Some said the servant was dismissed that evening. Others claimed he had simply been transferred. The details changed with every telling, but the lesson remained the same. The king's privacy was absolute. Emily looked down at Vanessa's assignment card again. The signature was genuine. She could turn around, return downstairs, and ask for clarification. Then she imagined Vanessa's expression. "Are you refusing a direct order?" Emily released a slow breath and opened the door. Cedar surrounded her immediately. The wardrobe was larger than her entire room in the servants' wing, perhaps 12 feet wide and 15 feet deep. Dark cabinets covered 2 walls. Formal jackets hung in careful rows, arranged by color and occasion. Boots stood polished beneath them. Everything was precise, restrained, almost severe. Nothing resembled the extravagant royal chambers Emily had imagined as a child. She found an empty hanger near the center cabinet and unzipped the garment bag. The ceremonial jacket inside was black, edged with subtle silver embroidery at the cuffs and collar. Emily lifted it carefully. That was when her wolf stirred. She stopped. The sensation was so unusual that she almost dismissed it. Her wolf rarely reacted to anything. Yet now something deep inside her pulled backward with unmistakable unease. Emily lowered the jacket slightly. "What is it?" she whispered, although no answer came. She examined the fabric. Nothing appeared wrong. Then sunlight shifted through the narrow window and caught something near the inner collar. A tiny bead of silver-colored liquid gleamed against the black cloth. Emily leaned closer without touching it. There was almost no scent, but what little reached her carried a cold metallic sharpness that awakened an old memory. Her mother's kitchen, dried herbs hanging above the window, a hunter sitting beside the stove while her mother warned Emily never to touch the silverroot medicine with bare hands. Emily's pulse quickened. Silverroot did not belong on clothing. Certainly not on clothing prepared for a werewolf king. She raised her hand, stopping an inch from the collar. Behind her, the service door opened. Emily turned. Alexander Blackwood stood there, 2 hours earlier than anyone had expected. Alexander did not look surprised to find her there. That frightened Emily more than anger would have. His silver-gray eyes moved from her raised hand to the ceremonial jacket, then settled on the tiny metallic bead near the collar. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Emily could hear the faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the adjoining chamber. "Do not touch that coat," Alexander said. She lowered her hand immediately. "I was not going to, Your Majesty. I saw something on the collar." His gaze sharpened. "What did you see?" Emily hesitated. Saying the wrong thing could make everything worse, but pretending ignorance felt more dangerous now. Something that should not be there. Alexander stepped farther into the wardrobe. He stopped several feet from the jacket and studied it without reaching for the fabric. "Explain." Emily drew a careful breath. "It looks like silverroot concentrate." For the first time, something shifted in his expression. It was small, no more than a tightening around his eyes, but Emily noticed. "You recognize silverroot?" "My mother used diluted silverroot preparations years ago, only for certain treatments, and always carefully." "Your mother was a healer?" "Not officially." Emily kept her voice steady. "People came to her when they could not afford one." Alexander looked at her again, longer this time. She had the uncomfortable sense that he was remembering every word. "And concentrated silverroot. She kept it locked away. She told me never to handle it directly." Emily glanced toward the jacket. "That is why I stopped." The sound of footsteps entered the corridor outside. Alexander turned his head. Emily recognized the rhythm of several people moving together. Too many for ordinary household work. Then came Vanessa's voice, faint but unmistakable. Check the royal suite. She cannot have gone far. Emily's stomach tightened. She looked at Alexander. His question was almost a whisper. Emily suddenly understood why the assignment had felt wrong from the beginning. Vanessa had ordered her into a restricted room, told her not to linger, and now appeared outside searching for someone. For her. Vanessa Hale sent me here, Emily said. Alexander's attention returned to her. This morning, she brought the jacket to the laundry room herself and gave me a signed assignment card. Where is it? Emily reached slowly toward her apron pocket. Alexander watched without moving. She removed the card and held it out. He accepted it by one corner and read the authorization. His face remained calm, but the silence around him changed. This signature is hers. Yes, Your Majesty. Did anyone see her give this to you? Emily thought of the laundry room. The servants who had stopped talking. The senior maid near the folding table. At least 6 people. Alexander handed the card back. Outside, the footsteps stopped. Emily's wolf stirred again, not at the jacket this time, but at the sudden stillness beyond the door. A soft knock followed. Your Majesty? Vanessa called. We were told you returned early. Is everything all right? Emily looked toward the open doorway between the wardrobe and preparation room. If Vanessa entered now, she would find exactly what she needed to find. An Omega Maid alone inside the king's restricted wardrobe, standing beside his ceremonial jacket. Emily glanced down at the authorization card. For the first time, she wondered whether it protected her at all. Perhaps it had never been meant to. Alexander seemed to reach the same conclusion. He crossed to the outer door and closed it. The latch clicked. Then he turned the lock. Emily's breath caught, but Alexander did not approach her. He stood beside the door, listening. Your Majesty? Vanessa called again. One of the maids has entered the restricted wing without permission. We believe she may have taken something. Emily stared at the black jacket. The accusation had arrived too quickly. No investigation. No question. No uncertainty. Alexander looked at her, and this time there was no doubt in his voice. They expected me to find you here. Emily felt cold despite the warmth of the room. I did not take anything. I know what you are holding. His eyes dropped to the empty garment bag still draped over her arm. The more important question is what they expected you to touch. Vanessa knocked a third time. Your Majesty, may we enter? Alexander's gaze shifted to the silver-colored bead on the collar. Then he looked back at Emily. Not yet, he said quietly, and Emily realized the answer was not meant for Vanessa. Alexander let the silence stretch until even Vanessa seemed uncertain what to do with it. Emily stood perfectly still, the empty garment bag hanging from her hand, while her mind worked through every detail of the morning. Vanessa arriving personally. The signed card. The warning not to linger. Now an accusation made before anyone had even asked where Emily was. It was too precise. Too prepared. Alexander moved toward a narrow cabinet beside the window and opened it. From inside, he removed a small wooden case and set it on the dressing table. Stay where you are, he said. Emily nodded. He opened the case and took out a pair of protective gloves and a clear glass vial. His movements were careful, almost clinical. Emily watched him approach the ceremonial jacket without touching anything else. How certain are you? He asked. About the silver root. Yes. Emily studied the metallic bead from several feet away. Certain enough that I would not let anyone wear that jacket. Alexander glanced at her. Even if being wrong cost you your position? The question landed harder than she expected. Emily looked toward the locked door. Vanessa and the others waited on the other side. Her position was probably already gone. She could imagine the servants whispering before supper. Emily Carter entered the king's private rooms. Emily Carter touched royal property. Emily Carter thought she knew better than everyone above her. She had spent 3 years making herself small enough to survive Blackridge, and somehow one morning had undone all of it. Yet when she looked at the jacket, the answer remained simple. Yes. Alexander said nothing. Emily swallowed. My mother taught me that being afraid of consequences does not make something safe. If I am wrong, I will accept that. But if I am right and I say nothing, someone could wear it tonight. His eyes held hers for a quiet second before he turned back to the coat. Using the glass vial, He carefully collected the silver-colored drop without allowing it to touch his skin. The liquid slid to the bottom and caught the sunlight. Alexander sealed the vial. Almost immediately, Emily's wolf settled slightly. She noticed the change and frowned. Alexander noticed her noticing. What? Nothing. That was not nothing. Emily hesitated. My wolf reacted when I came near the jacket. His expression sharpened again. Reacted how? She wanted me away from it. Emily pressed her fingers lightly against her apron. She is usually quiet. Usually? Almost always. Another knock interrupted them. This time a man's voice followed Vanessa's. Your Majesty, should we contact royal security? Alexander looked toward the door. No. His answer was loud enough to carry through the wood. Silence followed. I require privacy. Of course, Your Majesty, Vanessa replied, but Emily heard the tension beneath her politeness. Footsteps moved away, though not all of them. Someone remained outside. Alexander placed the vial back into the wooden case. They are waiting. For what? Emily asked. For me to open that door with you standing beside a compromised ceremonial garment. The truth settled heavily between them. Emily looked down at the authorization card still in her hand. Then I was supposed to be blamed. Perhaps. Alexander's voice remained measured. Or perhaps you were supposed to lead me toward the wrong conclusion. Emily looked at him. There is a difference. A significant one. He closed the wooden case. If someone merely wanted a servant dismissed, this is unnecessarily elaborate. If someone wanted the palace focused on a frightened Omega, while something more important happened elsewhere, it is efficient. A chill traveled through Emily that had nothing to do with the weather outside. She thought about the ceremonial schedule posted in the servants' hall. The gathering that evening. Visiting pack leaders. Royal family members. Hundreds of guests. Then another memory surfaced. She had seen Vanessa carrying 2 garment bags that morning, not one. Emily's fingers tightened around the card. There was another jacket. Alexander became completely still. What did you say? When Vanessa came into the laundry room, she gave me this garment bag, but I saw another one hanging from the card outside. Smaller than yours. Emily searched her memory. Dark fabric. Silver trim. A crest stitched near the shoulder. She had barely noticed it then. Now the image returned with terrible clarity. It looked ceremonial too. Alexander's calm expression changed. Not into panic, but into something focused and immediate. How much smaller? Emily pictured the garment. Small enough for a child. The clock in the adjoining room struck the quarter hour. Alexander looked at the wooden case, then toward the locked door. When he spoke again, his voice was very quiet. My nephew is wearing black and silver tonight. For one second, Emily forgot about Vanessa outside the door. She forgot about the accusation waiting in the corridor, the assignment card in her hand, and even the silver root sealed inside the wooden case. Your nephew? She asked. Alexander was already moving. He crossed to a writing desk built into the far wall and picked up the telephone. His expression remained controlled, but Emily noticed the tension in his hand as he lifted the receiver. Connect me to the East family wing. He waited. Nothing happened. His eyes narrowed. He pressed the switch hook once. Operator. Silence. Alexander lowered the receiver slowly. Emily felt her wolf stir again. Is the line dead? Only this line, apparently. He looked toward the locked door. The meaning reached her immediately. Someone had not merely placed her in the wardrobe. Someone had anticipated where Alexander might be when the jacket was discovered. Emily glanced at the clock. When is your nephew supposed to dress for the ceremony? 4:30. It was 4:12. 18 minutes. Alexander picked up the wooden case containing the vial and slipped it into an inner pocket of his coat. What does the second garment look like? Black wool. Silver trim. Smaller crest on the left shoulder. Emily closed her eyes briefly, rebuilding the image from memory. Vanessa beside the laundry doorway. The cart behind her. 2 garment bags. One long, one short. The bag had a white ribbon tied around the hanger. Alexander stopped. That is Noah's. The name changed something in his voice. Emily heard it immediately. Not weakness. Something warmer, carefully hidden beneath the authority everyone else saw. How old is he? 9. Emily's chest tightened. She looked at the door. Then we need to warn whoever is with him. We do. Alexander crossed toward her, stopping several feet away. But we do not walk into the hallway without knowing who is waiting there. Emily understood. If Vanessa had arranged this, she might already have prepared the next step. There is another way out. Alexander looked at her. Emily pointed toward the preparation room. The service corridors connect behind the linen cabinets. I use them when delivering towels to the guest suites. His eyebrows lifted slightly. You know the servants' passages in the royal wing? I know most service passages in the palace. Emily almost apologized for it, then stopped herself. Knowing how to do her job was not something that required forgiveness. Alexander seemed to reach the same conclusion. Show me. They moved into the preparation room. Emily opened a narrow cabinet beside a stack of folded blankets and pressed the small brass release hidden beneath the third shelf. The back panel shifted inward. Alexander stared at the opening. That is not on the royal floor plan. It is on the housekeeping map. For the first time, something almost like amusement touched his eyes. It disappeared quickly. Of course it is. Emily stepped into the passage first. The corridor was barely 3 feet wide, lit by small wall lamps spaced every 20 feet. Dust carried the dry scent of old stone. Alexander followed, and Emily became sharply aware of how strange the moment was. An hour earlier, she had been folding towels. Now the Alpha King was following her through a servant's passage because she might be the only person who knew where a dangerous ceremonial jacket had gone. They had traveled perhaps 40 feet when voices filtered through a vent ahead. Emily stopped so quickly Alexander nearly walked into her. He remained silent. Vanessa's voice came through the metal grate. The king has not opened the door. Another voice answered, male and unfamiliar. Then Carter is still inside. Emily's pulse jumped. Vanessa spoke again. It does not matter. Everyone will be watching the royal wing now. A pause. Then came the words that made Emily's hands turn cold. The smaller coat has already been delivered. Alexander did not move. Neither did Emily. Through the vent came the fading sound of footsteps. She looked back at him. His face had become unreadable. The East family wing is 2 floors down, Emily whispered. This passage reaches the back staircase. Alexander nodded once. Lead the way. Emily turned and hurried forward, but after only a few steps her wolf surged awake with such sudden urgency that she stopped again. This time the warning did not pull her backward. It pulled her toward the east wing, toward Noah, and somehow, impossibly, Emily knew they were already running out of time. Emily moved faster through the narrow passage, one hand gliding along the cold stone wall whenever the floor dipped beneath her feet. Alexander followed close enough that she could hear his measured breathing behind her, but he never told her to slow down. The small lamps overhead cast pools of amber light every 20 feet, leaving stretches of shadow between them. Emily knew these corridors better than most servants knew the public halls. They had been built for work, not beauty, and nobody important ever seemed to remember they existed. Today, being forgettable might be the only advantage they had. Left ahead, she whispered. Then down 2 flights. Alexander nodded. They reached a junction where 3 passages divided behind the palace walls. Emily turned left, but a sound beyond the plaster stopped her. Men's voices. Royal security? She whispered. Alexander listened. No. Household staff. Emily frowned. Household staff should have been preparing the great hall, not gathering near the hidden staircase. She stepped toward a narrow vent and looked through its slats. 4 attendants stood in the corridor outside, each positioned near an entrance to the royal wing. None carried linens or trays. They were simply waiting. Emily pulled back. They are covering the hallways. Which means Vanessa expected someone to leave my rooms, Alexander said quietly. Maybe you. Maybe both of us. Emily looked at him. That possibility was worse. Alexander had returned early because the council session ended unexpectedly. Whoever arranged the trap could not have known that. Unless the plan had been designed to work, whether he discovered Emily immediately or hours later. She replayed Vanessa's words through the vent. Everyone will be watching the royal wing now. Suddenly, Emily understood. They wanted attention upstairs. Alexander's eyes settled on her. Explain. If everyone believes there is a security problem near your rooms, guards get moved here. Senior staff come here. People start watching these doors instead of somewhere else. She glanced toward the floor beneath them. Like the family wing. Alexander went completely still. Emily worried she had spoken too boldly. But then he said, "Keep going." They turned away from the guarded corridor and continued through the wall. At the back staircase, Emily opened another concealed panel. The stairs descended steeply, narrow enough that Alexander had to angle his shoulders. Halfway down, Emily heard distant music beginning in the great hall. The palace was preparing for the evening ceremony. Her stomach tightened. "What happens tonight?" she asked. "The Autumn Alliance reception. Noah appears with me before the visiting packs. So everyone expects him to wear formal colors." "Yes." Alexander's answer was clipped. Emily descended another step. "Who prepares his clothes?" "His personal attendant." "Who supervises that attendant?" Alexander did not answer immediately. He did not need to. "Vanessa," Emily whispered. They reached the lower landing. A faint metallic scent drifted through the cracks around the service panel. Emily stopped. Her wolf stirred sharply. Not the distant unease from upstairs. This was immediate. Focused. "It is here." Alexander stepped beside her. "You smell silverroot." "Not exactly." Emily pressed her palm against the wall. "I feel it." His gaze moved to her hand. "Through stone." Emily wished she had a better explanation. "I told you my wolf was quiet. I did not say she was gone." For years, that silence had been treated like a defect. Other Omegas spoke about their wolves as constant companions, warm presences beneath their thoughts. Emily's had always felt far away, like something sleeping behind a locked door. Yet since she entered Alexander's wardrobe, that door seemed to be opening. Alexander studied her for another second, then gestured toward the panel. "Where does this lead?" "A linen alcove about 30 feet from Noah's rooms." Emily pressed the release. Before opening it fully, she listened. No voices. She pushed the panel outward and stepped into the alcove. Alexander followed. The family corridor beyond was brighter than the servants' passages, with cream walls, framed landscapes, and tall windows overlooking the eastern gardens. At the far end stood an open bedroom door. A cheerful child's voice floated into the hallway. "Uncle Alex said I have to wear the formal one, even though the collar makes me look 80. Emily almost smiled. Then her wolf surged so strongly that her breath caught. A woman answered from inside. "Hold still, Noah. We are almost finished." Emily knew that voice. Not Vanessa, one of the attendants from the laundry room. Alexander took one step forward, but Emily caught his sleeve without thinking. He looked down at her hand. She released him immediately. "Sorry. Why did you stop me?" Emily stared toward Noah's open doorway. The metallic sensation was stronger now, but something about it felt wrong. Too obvious. Too close. She remembered Alexander's words upstairs. "Perhaps you were supposed to lead me toward the wrong conclusion. Because they knew we might figure out the smaller code," she whispered. "What if that is what they want?" Alexander's expression hardened with concentration. Emily looked past Noah's room toward the end of the corridor, where another servant was pushing a covered clothing cart toward the ceremonial elevators. Her wolf reacted instantly. Not toward Noah. Toward the cart. Emily's heart began pounding. "The coat is not the real target anymore," she said. Alexander followed her gaze. The elevator doors opened. The servant pushed the cart inside. "Then what is?" Emily watched the doors begin to close. "Whatever they are sending downstairs." The elevator doors were almost closed when Alexander crossed the corridor. "Hold it." His voice was not loud, but the servant inside reacted immediately. One hand shot toward the control panel, stopping the doors with only inches between them. Emily followed Alexander, her pulse racing as the doors reopened. The servant pushing the covered cart looked startled. "Your Majesty, I did not know you were on this floor." Alexander's attention went to the cart. "Where are you taking that?" "The ceremonial hall, sir. Final wardrobe delivery." Emily remained several feet behind him, trying to understand what her wolf was telling her. The strange pressure beneath her ribs had become stronger, but it did not feel like the warning she had sensed from Alexander's jacket. This was different. Restless. Searching. Alexander glanced back at her. He had already learned to recognize the change in her expression. "Is it the cart?" Emily stepped closer without touching it. The cover was dark canvas, tied neatly at both ends. Beneath it hung several garments. She could smell starch, cedar, clean wool, and something faintly floral. No sharp metallic scent. Her wolf remained unsettled. "I do not know." The servant looked between them, confused. "Is something wrong?" Alexander ignored the question. "Who authorized this delivery?" "Miss Hale." Emily's stomach tightened. Alexander's face revealed nothing. "Open it." The servant untied the canvas cover. Inside were 3 formal coats, 2 women's ceremonial cloaks, and a small black jacket with silver trim. Emily recognized it immediately. The white ribbon still circled the hanger. That is the one I saw this morning. Alexander reached toward it, then stopped before touching the fabric. Emily. She moved closer. Her wolf responded, but not with the sharp recoil from upstairs. Emily leaned toward the collar, careful to keep several inches between herself and the jacket. Nothing. No metallic trace. No silver-colored bead. It is clean, she said. Alexander looked at her. You are certain? I think so. The servant shifted nervously. That jacket is for Master Noah. I was told it had to reach the hall before 4:30. Emily stared at the white ribbon. If this was the same garment she had seen with Vanessa, then either it had never been treated with silverroot or someone had cleaned it. Neither answer made sense. Where was this cart before you brought it here? She asked. The servant hesitated, perhaps surprised that a maid was questioning him in front of the king. Alexander answered the hesitation with a look. Tell her. The East preparation room. I collected it 5 minutes ago. Was it unattended? Emily asked. For a little while. Maybe 10 minutes. Alexander checked the clock mounted above the elevator. For 11 minutes remained before Noah was scheduled to dress. Emily looked again at the cart. Her wolf was still pulling at her attention, but not toward the child's jacket. She closed her eyes. The sensation shifted when the elevator machinery hummed beneath them. Down. Emily opened her eyes. What is directly below us? The servant answered first. The ceremonial level. Alexander studied Emily. What are you sensing? She hated how uncertain the answer sounded. Something below. The elevator doors began to close again, but Alexander stepped inside, and Emily followed. Lobby level, he said. The servant stayed behind with the cart. As the elevator descended, Emily's strange inner awareness grew stronger. Her wolf had been nearly silent for years, yet now every floor seemed to bring it closer to the surface. The sensation was not words. It was direction. A pull. When the doors opened, music and conversation rolled toward them from the great hall. Hundreds of guests were arriving beneath chandeliers glowing with warm gold light. Staff hurried between reception tables. Visiting pack leaders gathered near the marble staircase. Nobody seemed alarmed. That made Emily more nervous. Where? Alexander asked. She looked left. Nothing. Right. Her wolf stirred. This way. They moved along the edge of the reception hall. Several people noticed Alexander and immediately straightened, but he did not stop. Emily became painfully aware of her plain gray uniform among formal gowns and dark suits. Whispers followed them. She kept walking. The pull led toward a side chamber where ceremonial items waited before presentation. 2 guards stood outside. Alexander dismissed them with a brief command and opened the door. Inside were banners, presentation boxes, silver ceremonial cups, and several covered tables. Emily stopped at the threshold. The warning inside her became so strong, she pressed a hand to her chest. Here. Alexander entered carefully. Which item? Emily scanned the room. Nothing looked unusual. Then she noticed a familiar scent beneath the cedar and polished silver. Lavender. Vanessa's perfume. On the nearest table rested a velvet presentation box bearing the Blackwood crest. Alexander followed her gaze. That contains the oath medallion Noah presents to me tonight. Emily stepped closer. Her wolf recoiled. Do not open it. Alexander stopped. A clock chimed somewhere beyond the chamber. 4:22. Emily stared at the closed box as the pieces finally aligned. The poison jacket upstairs had never been the destination. It had been the distraction. The smaller coat had been the second distraction. She looked at Alexander. They did not need Noah to wear anything. Her voice fell almost to a whisper. They needed him to carry something directly to you. Emily kept her eyes on the velvet box. From beyond the chamber doors came the gentle rise and fall of conversation, polished laughter, and the distant notes of a string quartet. Hundreds of guests were gathering less than 50 feet away, unaware that one small ceremonial object had changed the meaning of the entire evening. Alexander stood beside her, motionless. The medallion is presented by Noah? Emily asked. Every year. His voice was quiet. It is a family tradition. He carries the box into the hall, opens it before the visiting packs, and hands the medallion to me. Emily looked at the Blackwood crest stamped into the velvet. So nobody would question him carrying it. No. And nobody would search a 9-year-old boy. Alexander's jaw tightened slightly. No. Emily's wolf pulled away from the box again. The response was unmistakable now. She had felt the same warning near the ceremonial jacket, only weaker. Whatever had been placed there was connected to what waited inside this box. Alexander moved toward a cabinet along the wall. Do not come closer. Emily stayed where she was while he retrieved a pair of ceremonial handling gloves. Those might not be enough, she said. He stopped. Why? Emily searched her memory, her mother's hands moving carefully across a kitchen table. Small brown bottles kept inside a locked wooden cabinet. Instructions Emily had been too young to understand, but old enough to remember. Silverroot concentrate can transfer to fabric and metal. My mother always used glass tools when she prepared diluted treatments. Alexander looked at the gloves, then set them down. You remember that from childhood? I remember almost everything she taught me. Yet you work in laundry. Emily felt the familiar sting beneath the observation. She lowered her gaze for half a second, then raised it again. Knowing something does not always make people willing to listen. Alexander studied her, but before he could respond, footsteps approached outside. Emily turned. Vanessa's voice drifted through the door. The presentation room should already be cleared. Alexander's expression changed instantly. He gestured toward a narrow alcove behind a row of ceremonial banners. Emily understood and moved into the shadowed space. Alexander followed, leaving the room exactly as they had found it. The door opened. Vanessa entered with a man Emily recognized as one of the senior event coordinators. The boy comes down in 5 minutes, the man said. Everything is prepared. Vanessa crossed directly to the velvet box. Emily's heartbeat quickened. Vanessa did not open it. She merely adjusted its position by an inch. And the maid, the man asked, contained upstairs. Vanessa's tone was calm. By the time anyone asks questions, Carter will be the obvious explanation. Emily felt something inside her go still. Alexander stood less than 2 feet away in the darkness. She could not see his expression clearly, but she sensed the controlled weight of his silence. What if the king believes her? The man asked. Vanessa gave a soft laugh. Alexander Blackwood does not trust Omegas he finds hiding in his private rooms. Emily closed her eyes briefly. There it was. The entire plan reduced to one assumption. That rank would speak louder than truth. Vanessa continued. Once the wardrobe is searched, they will find enough to keep everyone occupied. Tonight proceeds as scheduled. Her footsteps moved toward the door. The man followed. Seconds later, they were gone. Alexander waited until their voices disappeared completely before stepping from the alcove. Emily followed. Now you know I did not put it there, she said. He turned toward her. I knew that before they walked in. The answer caught her off guard. How? Because you had every opportunity to save yourself by saying nothing. His gaze shifted toward the velvet box. Instead, you kept finding reasons to warn me. Emily did not know what to say. Alexander walked to the chamber door and locked it from inside. We have 5 minutes. Until Noah arrives. Yes. Emily looked at the box again. Then let me help. Alexander's eyes narrowed. You have already helped. Not enough. She surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. If my mother taught me something that can identify what is inside that box, then standing in the hallway because I am an Omega Maid would be foolish. The room became silent. Emily could hear her own breathing. She had never spoken to anyone of Alexander's rank that way. She expected correction. Instead, something almost approving appeared in his silver-gray eyes. What do you need? Emily looked around the preparation chamber. A glass bowl, clean water, white cotton cloth, and the vial you collected upstairs. Alexander reached inside his coat and placed the wooden case on the table. Anything else? Emily met his gaze. Trust me for 5 minutes. A knock sounded at the door before he could answer. Then a child's cheerful voice came through the wood. Uncle Alex? They said my medallion is in there. Emily looked at the clock. 4:25. Noah was early. Noah knocked again, lighter this time. Uncle Alex? Alexander crossed to the door, but did not unlock it. Wait outside for me, Noah. A brief silence followed. Am I in trouble? The uncertainty in the boy's voice changed Alexander's face in a way Emily had not seen before. The king lowered his voice. No, you have done nothing wrong. Stay with your attendant, and do not touch anything brought from this room until I come out. Okay. Small footsteps retreated into the hall. Emily released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Alexander turned toward her. You have your 5 minutes. He opened a side cabinet and found a glass water pitcher and bowl used for ceremonial preparation. Emily took a folded white cotton cloth from a supply drawer. Alexander placed the wooden case beside her, then stepped back. He did not question her again. That trust felt heavier than suspicion. Emily poured a small amount of clean water into the bowl. My mother used to test contaminated tools this way, she explained. Silverroot concentrate leaves a faint gray trace when moisture carries it onto untreated white cotton. It is not perfect, but if the substance on your jacket came from the same preparation, the color should look similar. Alexander watched her hands. And the box. We do not need to open it yet. Emily twisted one corner of the cloth into a narrow point, dampened it, and carefully brushed the outside edge of the velvet box where Vanessa had touched it. Nothing changed. She tried the brass clasp without pressing it open. A pale gray line slowly appeared across the wet cotton. Emily's stomach tightened. Alexander saw it too. Same color. Close. He opened the wooden case and held the sealed vial near the cloth without touching either. The metallic sheen inside matched the faint residue almost exactly. Emily's wolf recoiled again. It is there. Alexander looked toward the door. Then Noah never touches this box. Emily nodded, but something bothered her. She stared at the medallion case, replaying Vanessa's conversation. Tonight proceeds as scheduled. If the plan depended only on Noah carrying a contaminated box, why place Silverroot on Alexander's jacket first? Why frame Emily? Why create so many layers around one object? Wait. Alexander looked at her. What? Emily stepped away from the table. This still feels too obvious. You just confirmed contamination. Yes, but Vanessa knew someone might discover the jacket. She planned for me to be blamed. Then she prepared the smaller code so we would focus on Noah. Now this box leads directly back to the ceremony. Emily looked toward the great hall beyond the wall. Music continued, smooth and elegant, while guests waited for the royal family. Every clue keeps pulling us toward another clue. Alexander's expression became thoughtful. A chain of distractions. Exactly. Emily looked around the preparation room. Banners, presentation boxes, ceremonial cups, programs, gifts from visiting packs. Then she remembered something Vanessa had said. Everyone will be watching the royal wing now. Not the king, the royal wing. What changes when there is a security concern involving you? Emily asked. Protocols tighten. And during the ceremony? My personal cup, food, clothing, and presentation objects are replaced with verified items. Emily's heart beat faster. Who controls the replacements? Alexander's eyes sharpened. The senior household office. Vanessa's office. Emily turned toward a second table where several silver cups waited beneath white covers. So if someone wanted one particular object substituted, creating a security concern would give them a reason to replace everything without looking suspicious. Alexander crossed to the table. Do not touch them. I will not. Emily closed her eyes for 1 second, trying to separate fear from the strange guidance of her wolf. The pull did not come from the cups. It came from farther away, through the wall, toward the great hall. A bell sounded outside, announcing 10 minutes until the royal presentation. Then came hurried footsteps. Someone called for the ceremonial procession to assemble. Emily opened her eyes. The dangerous item is already out there. Alexander reached for the door. Can you find it? Emily looked toward the sound of hundreds of guests beyond the corridor. Her wolf rose inside her with startling clarity. For years it had been little more than a whisper. Now it felt like a compass. I think so. Alexander unlocked the door. Noah stood 20 feet away beside his attendant, dressed in the clean black jacket with the white ribbon removed. The boy smiled when he saw his uncle. Emily's wolf remained calm. Not Noah. Then a servant crossed the far end of the hallway carrying a polished silver tray toward the great hall. On it rested a single black velvet pouch embroidered with the Blackwood crest. Emily's wolf surged. She pointed. That. Alexander followed her gaze. What is it? Emily watched the servant disappear through the ceremonial doors. I do not know. The bell sounded again. Alexander's name was announced inside the hall. Emily started forward. But whatever it is, they just carried it into a room full of people. Emily followed Alexander through the ceremonial doors and into a wall of warm light, music, and startled silence. The great hall stretched nearly 100 feet beneath crystal chandeliers, its polished floor reflecting hundreds of guests dressed in formal pack colors. Conversations stopped almost at once. Visiting alphas turned toward their king. Council members straightened. At the far end of the room, Vanessa stood beside the ceremonial platform with perfect composure, but Emily saw the moment her eyes found them together. The color left her face for barely a second. Then it returned. Emily searched for the servant with the silver tray. There, 20 feet ahead, moving between two rows of guests toward the platform. The black velvet pouch rested in the center. Her wolf pulled toward it with such certainty that every other sound seemed to fade. Alexander, Emily whispered before remembering herself. Your Majesty, it is getting stronger. He did not correct her. Stay beside me. They moved forward. The crowd parted automatically for Alexander, but the curious looks directed at Emily felt almost physical. A plain Omega Maid walking beside the Alpha King during a royal ceremony was enough to start whispers. Vanessa stepped down from the platform. Your Majesty, we were concerned. The presentation is ready to begin. Alexander did not slow. Who authorized that tray? Vanessa glanced toward it. The household office, as always. Who specifically? A pause. Tiny, but Emily heard it. I did. The servant carrying the tray had nearly reached Noah, who waited near the platform in his black ceremonial jacket. Emily's wolf surged. Stop. Her voice came out louder than she intended. The servant froze. So did the room. Hundreds of faces turned toward her. Emily felt heat rise into her cheeks. Vanessa's expression hardened. Emily Carter, you are interrupting a royal ceremony. Emily wanted to disappear. Every instinct built during 3 quiet years told her to lower her head, apologize, and step backward. Then Noah looked at her. He was only 9 years old. He did not know why the room had become silent. Emily remembered her mother's voice from years ago. Being afraid of consequences does not make something safe. She lifted her chin. Please do not let him touch that pouch. Vanessa gave a small, incredulous laugh. Your Majesty, this maid was discovered in a restricted area earlier today. She is clearly confused. Murmurs spread through the hall. Emily felt them immediately. Omega Maid. Restricted room. The story was assembling itself exactly as Vanessa had planned. Alexander looked at Emily. Tell me what you sense. The question silenced her fear. He was asking her publicly, trusting her publicly. Emily focused on the tray. The same warning I felt near your ceremonial jacket and the medallion box. Stronger now. Vanessa stepped forward. This is absurd. We are delaying representatives from 12 packs because a laundry maid has a feeling. Emily's hands trembled, but her voice did not. Then test it. Vanessa stopped. Emily looked at Alexander. Test my room. Search my belongings. Ask every servant in the laundry who gave me the assignment card. Test the jacket upstairs, the medallion box, and that pouch. If I am wrong, I will accept whatever consequence follows. She turned toward Vanessa. But until then, Noah should not touch it. A deep silence settled across the hall. Alexander's gaze remained on Emily for several seconds. Then he faced the head of royal security near the platform. Seal the ceremonial items for examination. Nobody touches them without protective handling procedures. The officer nodded immediately. Vanessa's composure finally cracked. Your Majesty, surely you do not intend to disrupt an alliance ceremony over the word of one Omega. Alexander turned toward her. His voice stayed calm. No. Vanessa seemed to relax. Then he continued. I am disrupting it because someone contaminated my ceremonial jacket, interfered with communications in my private suite, manipulated household security, and prepared a servant to take responsibility. The whispers vanished. Vanessa stared at him. Alexander reached inside his coat and removed Emily's signed assignment card. And because your authorization placed Emily Carter exactly where you later claimed she had entered without permission. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the nearest exit. Emily noticed. So did Alexander. Nobody leaves, he said. The doors were quietly closed. Noah stepped nearer to his uncle, confused but safe. Emily finally released the breath trapped in her chest. She thought the worst moment had passed. Then her wolf reacted again. Not toward the velvet pouch. Not toward Vanessa. Toward the ceremonial platform itself. Emily turned slowly. At its center stood the blackwood oath table, prepared for Alexander and Noah. Resting on the polished wood was a silver ceremonial seal that had not been there moments earlier. Her pulse stumbled. Your Majesty. Alexander followed her gaze. Emily took one step forward. The pouch was another distraction. Vanessa's expression changed. Emily pointed toward the seal. That is what they wanted you to touch. The great hall seemed to contract around the silver seal. Emily could hear the chandeliers humming faintly above them, the rustle of formal clothing, Noah breathing somewhere behind Alexander. Nobody moved toward the oath table. Alexander raised one hand, and the head of royal security immediately understood. Clear the platform. Nobody touches the seal. Officers moved calmly through the room, guiding attendants and guests several feet back without disturbing the ceremonial table. Emily kept her eyes on the polished object. It looked harmless. That was what frightened her. The seal was no larger than her palm, engraved with the Blackwood crest and mounted on a dark wooden handle. During the oath, Alexander would press it into ceremonial wax before representatives of the 12 visiting packs. Everyone in the hall expected him to touch it. Vanessa had expected it too. That seal was verified this morning, a council member said. Alexander turned toward him. By whom? The man checked a ceremony ledger held by an attendant. His expression changed. The senior household office. Every gaze shifted toward Vanessa. She remained upright, but the perfect confidence she had carried into the hall was gone. I supervise hundreds of objects every week, she said. My name appearing on a record proves nothing. Then you should welcome verification, Emily said softly. Vanessa looked at her as though she had forgotten an Omega Maid could speak without permission. Emily almost lowered her eyes. Almost. Then Noah moved closer behind his uncle, and Emily remembered why she had entered this hall. She held Vanessa's stare. Alexander gestured toward the security officer. Bring the testing materials from the preparation chamber. Minutes later, the glass bowl, white cotton cloth, sealed vial, and protective equipment were placed on a separate table. Emily explained her mother's method while a royal medical officer performed the test. Nobody asked Emily to touch the seal. That mattered more than she expected. The officer dampened the cotton and carefully sampled the underside of the wooden handle. At first, nothing happened. Vanessa released a slow breath. Then a pale gray line appeared across the white cloth. The medical officer looked at Alexander. It matches the residue from the other items closely enough that the seal should be isolated immediately. A murmur swept through the guests. Alexander remained still. And the pouch. Another test followed. Clean. Emily stared at it. Just as she suspected. It had existed to pull attention away from the table. The smaller jacket was clean too. Layer after layer. Each false danger designed to make the next discovery look like the final one. Alexander faced Vanessa. Who replaced the seal? I do not know. You authorized the ceremonial inventory. That does not mean I personally handled every item. You authorized Emily Carter to enter my wardrobe. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Because the jacket had been misplaced. Then you told security she entered without permission. Silence. Vanessa looked toward the event coordinator standing near the wall. He immediately lowered his gaze. Alexander noticed. Separate the household staff who handled today's ceremonial inventory. Review the service logs, telephone records, assignment cards, and corridor access. No accusations beyond what the evidence supports. His calmness changed the room more effectively than anger could have. There would be no spectacle, no rushed judgment. Only questions Vanessa could no longer control. Two officers approached her. She lifted her chin. You are trusting a servant over someone who has managed this palace for 7 years. Alexander looked toward Emily. I am trusting evidence. Vanessa was escorted quietly from the hall with the event coordinator for questioning. Nobody spoke until the doors closed behind them. Emily suddenly became aware of how many people were staring at her. Her courage began draining away now that there was nothing immediate to do. She looked down at her gray maid's uniform. A loose thread hung from one cuff. Her shoes were practical and worn. Around her stood alphas, diplomats, council members, and nobles dressed for ceremony. She had never felt more visibly out of place. Emily. Alexander's voice brought her head up. He was standing beside Noah. Come here. She crossed the polished floor slowly. Noah looked at her with wide blue eyes. You knew the seal was wrong? Emily crouched slightly so she would not tower over him. My wolf knew something was wrong. I just listened. Is your wolf always that smart? The innocent question caught her by surprise. A small smile touched Emily's face. She has been very quiet for a long time. Noah considered this seriously. Maybe she was waiting for something important. Emily's throat tightened. Before she could answer, Alexander stepped down from the raised platform. The Alpha King, before 12 visiting packs and his entire court, descended until he stood on the same floor as an Omega Maid. Then he did something even quieter. He inclined his head to her. Not deeply, not ceremonially, but unmistakably. The room went silent. "You protected my family when remaining silent would have protected you," he said. Emily could barely breathe. "I only did what seemed right." "That is rarely only anything." His silver-gray eyes held hers. "From this moment forward, no one in Blackridge Palace will treat your voice as insignificant." Something inside Emily stirred. Her wolf, warm and awake, rose toward Alexander's presence with a recognition so sudden that Emily's fingers trembled. Across from her, Alexander went completely still. His eyes changed. He had felt it too. Alexander recovered first. The change was almost invisible, a slow breath, a slight tightening of his hand. But Emily had spent years surviving by noticing what other people missed. Something had passed between them in the middle of that silent hall, something her wolf understood before she did. Alexander turned toward the gathered guests. "The ceremony is postponed until every ceremonial item has been verified. My staff will provide updated arrangements." Nobody objected. Noah reached for his uncle's hand, and Alexander looked down at him with quiet relief. "Can I change out of this collar now?" Noah asked. A ripple of gentle laughter moved through the room, breaking the tension. Alexander almost smiled. Immediately, Noah looked at Emily. "She should come with us." Emily blinked. "I should probably return to the servants' wing." Alexander's gaze returned to her. "No." The single word made several nearby guests glance over. Emily felt her old instinct telling her to retreat. "Your Majesty, my shift is not finished." "Emily, you prevented a serious mistake tonight. I think the towels can survive without you." Noah grinned. Emily could not help smiling too. An hour later, after Noah had been escorted safely to the family wing and investigators had begun reviewing the household records, Emily found herself walking beside Alexander through the quiet third-floor corridor. Evening had settled beyond the windows, turning the forest outside into a dark sea beneath the rising moon. They stopped outside his private wardrobe. Emily's steps slowed. So much had happened since she first crossed that threshold that morning. Alexander opened the door. "There is something I need to show you." Emily entered. The contaminated jacket was gone, removed for examination. The room smelled only of cedar now. Alexander followed and closed the door, but this time Emily did not feel trapped. He reached into his pocket and placed a small brass key in her palm. She stared at it. "What is this?" "Access to the royal service rooms." "Why are you giving it to me?" "Because tomorrow you will not report to the laundry." Emily looked up sharply. "Am I being dismissed?" His eyebrows lifted. "That is what you think." "I entered a restricted room, interrupted a royal ceremony, and accused the head of the household staff in front of 12 visiting packs. It has been an unusual day." The faintest smile appeared on his face. "You are not being dismissed." He stepped back, giving her space. "I want you assigned to the royal household investigation until we understand how today's security was compromised. After that, you may choose whether you want another position." Choose. The word landed strangely. Emily could not remember the last time someone with authority had offered her a choice. She closed her fingers around the key. "Why me?" Alexander's expression became serious again. "Because everyone else saw a maid where they expected to see a maid. You saw what was actually in front of you." Emily's wolf stirred warmly. Alexander felt it. She knew he did because his breath stopped for half a beat. "There is something else," he said. The room seemed suddenly quieter. "This morning, when I found you here, my wolf reacted to you." Emily's fingers tightened around the key. "Mine reacted to you too." "I know." "How?" Alexander looked almost uncertain, an expression she had never imagined seeing on the Alpha King. "Because mine has not reacted that way to anyone before." Emily could hear her heartbeat. No grand declaration followed. No command. Alexander simply stood several feet away and allowed the truth to exist between them without forcing it into a name. Emily appreciated that more than she could explain. "What happens now?" she asked. "Tomorrow, we investigate. And after that," his silver-gray eyes softened. "After that, we find out what this means at whatever pace you choose." For the first time all day, Emily breathed without fear. She looked down at the brass key resting in her hand, then toward the doorway that had once represented everything forbidden to someone of her rank. Her wolf was no longer silent. It rested beneath her heart like a small, steady flame. Emily finally understood that perhaps Noah had been right. Maybe it had never been broken. Maybe it had simply been waiting for something worth answering. Alexander opened the door for her, and together they stepped into the moonlit corridor, not as a king dragging an Omega behind him, but as two people standing at the beginning of a truth neither had expected. Thank you so much for watching this story with us. If Emily's courage and kindness touched your heart, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what moment stayed with you the most. Please like and share this video with someone who loves stories about dignity, destiny, and second chances, and subscribe to support the channel and join us for the next story.